me 10 years ago wouldn't have told you that. I would have been like, overcome, rise above, power through, whatever. But what I've learned, I'll be 40 in January, and what I've learned at this point in my life is...
We'll never know.
Rachel Hollis, welcome to Women of Impact.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here in person.
Finally in person, girl.
Yes.
Homie, when I think of you, the only word that comes flashing in my mind is resilient.
I'll take it.
So many of us go through hardship, go through difficulties, and whether it's relationships, business, matters of the heart, matters of the mind, and so many of us, when we go through those hardships, including myself, it's hard to get back up. It's hard to take that knock to the face and get back up, lean into who you want to be, and keep going. And girl, you're freaking resilient, and I so want to learn, what are the tips and tactics you do so that you show up every freaking day in your business, in your relationship, in your family.
All the things.
All the things.
Okay, we're jumping right in.
She's in her I'm in heaven vibe going. I'm in heaven now. I wear flowy white tops and linen white pants.
So I guess probably the biggest reason that I have that is a willingness
I'm better than everyone.
to look at my past. Okay, so...
Yeah, she looks at it. She doesn't address it or do anything about it or acknowledge it publicly, but she looks at it and she goes, meh.
I feel like this is one of those things that everyone talks about, like, you're supposed to be strong, you're supposed to be resilient, you're supposed to do these things. And oftentimes we'll read the books or we'll watch the YouTube videos, listen to podcasts to try and learn how to be a certain way. But I think that if we can look at our past, sort of look historically and find moments where we already were resilient, that actually gives us incredible power for how we navigate that in our current life. So the reason that I know to do that, honestly, is I had to teach it. I think, I don't know if you feel like this, but when you write a book, create a podcast.
I learned by my own teaching to other people who I don't care as much about. They can learn from me before I can learn from myself because I'm more complicated. The simpletons have learned from me for years, but now I am ready to learn from myself by teaching others. What? Excuse me?
If you're going to go give a keynote speech or a conference, you have to figure out how to explain the things that you know. And the very first time I did a Rise conference, it was only one day, and I was like, what could I teach people that I know how to do? Because it was like in that movie, I built it and then hoped they would come. But once they said, okay, we'll come, I had no idea what I was going to teach, literally. My best friend Beans, we were just like, let's throw a conference. We didn't know what we were doing. So I was like, what could I teach? And I
taught people how to be me. Okay.
At my life. And I was like, well, I've been through a lot of shit. I've been through a lot of really hard stuff. So what do I know how to teach? I know how to teach getting through hard things. Literally.
The answer is find financial security literally as fast as possible. Don't pay attention to any red flags. Get into a financial secure situation with somebody that makes more money than you and legally become part of their life, and that will set you up for success. As horrible as that is, that's what she did, and that's the tip that I think she could give people. She was not going to make it as an intern at Miramax without Dave's salary keeping her in LA. She would have burnt out in a couple years. Instead, she got married to the first guy who walked in that, was older and had an established career already, that was, young enough, I guess, 27, 19, okay, whatever. But, that's her real tip there. But she doesn't want to say that. She wants to say, oh, I did all this stuff. It's like, no, but the big one, you can do a million little things that are little tips, but the big difference, if for example, there's all this debate about, nepotism in Hollywood. Obviously it exists, but Steven Spielberg's daughter is directing a film with I don't know, what's the guy's name? Like, the guy who was in Rocky. Oh my God. You know who I'm talking about. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, she's a good director. Okay, but like, that's not the reason that you're doing that as your first movie. The reason is your dad is a successful director, one of the most famous directors in the world. That's why. Rocky Balboa. Like, that's why. Well, that's not his real name. Whatever. It's like, so the big thing is marry as soon as possible someone with financial security. Then you can take all these risks and go for your dreams. I just answered the question.
If I'm an expert
Stallone.
at something,
Sylvester
I know
Stallone.
how
Thank
to do
you.
that. I had a really difficult childhood. My parents' marriage was tumultuous is a nice way to say it. My dad had a very intense temper. My older brother was schizophrenic. He took his own life when I was 14. I had to overcome and navigate a lot of.
Again, we're talking about this story about the brother, like, like, yes, it's something she had to overcome, but at the same time, it's like, that's his trauma, not yours. Like, it's your own trauma, but like that happening, I don't know. She brings it up too much, I think. I think maybe I'm just annoyed at this point.
Things. I moved out when I was 17 years old, moved to LA. And I just, quite honestly, my life had been really hard, and I didn't know there was another way. Like, all my friends' lives were hard. I didn't know what it would look like to have a family where everyone was kind and loved each other and like nice. And so I don't know, when it's your life, you just sort of figure it out. And that's what I had done. And so in looking back, I was like, well, dang, I know how to get through hard things and still believe in myself and still think that a dream could come true and still reach for joy. And yeah, so that.
Again, like, I think honestly the answer is if more people were financially secure, meaning they didn't have $20 million of debt out of school, if they had, if housing was more affordable, if people were able to, not have to take out credit cards to buy food, and like, if things were more equal, or if we were more sharing as a society. Now, this is obviously my perspective. Yeah, a lot of these things would apply. Then the playing field would be even, and then we could have self-help. I think self-help doesn't work unless the playing field is equal. Or I guess it's like this unsaid thing of like, this only applies if you have a Disney executive husband. Like, let me just say that for the record. Like, if you're dealing with anything less than that, this advice is not going to work. So, but then these people don't work to make the world more equal. That's the part I don't understand. If you really believe in this, help bring up more people to the level you're at, and then you can talk about what to be grateful for and to, choose joy and that sort of thing. But like, when the field is so crazy, it just doesn't apply, and then it becomes like nothing. It's meaningless.
That's what I started to teach. And when you're trying to figure out how to teach something, you sort of unpack it and you look at it and you're like, what are the things that I know? So it's the best piece of advice I can give anyone, because every single person, everyone watching this, listening to this, you, the camera guy, everybody, could look at their past and look for things that they had to overcome. And what I always think is like, these hard seasons that we get inside of, I always think it's been way worse. It's been way worse. No matter what I go through, I'm like, well, it's not the day that your brother died. Okay, well, it's not the day that this hard thing happened or this horrible thing happened. We're not in that. And remember that you navigated that, and remember you came out, and remember you were stronger. Like, that history is what gives me courage in this moment, and I think can give anybody courage no matter what they're going through.
Dude, that's so freaking powerful. But as you were talking, I was thinking about how many people are so scared to go back and remember, because they've held on to so much emotion that's connected to that event, right? Certain shame, certain guilt,
Yes.
certain embarrassment. There's all these feelings that we put on ourselves and that we block the past out so that we don't feel the same thing we felt back then.
Right.
So how do you start to go back to that without bringing up those same feelings that then make you stuck again?
Well, I think you have to let yourself feel all the things. That's what I've learned, and that's scary and that's hard, and you know, me 10 years ago wouldn't have told you that. I would have been like, overcome, rise above, power through, whatever. But what I've learned, you know, I'll be 40 in January. And what I've learned at this point in my life is if you don't process it in the moment, you're going to process it for the next decade or 2 or 3. There is no escaping the emotions of the hard stuff that we go through, period. Like if you don't.
So don't choose joy, choose sadness? Merch available? Is that what you're saying, Rachel? Like, again, like I'm all for changing your mind, but you gotta like allow your audience to understand like you've changed. This, when she wrote Girl Wash Your Face, she wrote this in she wrote it like before, but it came out in 2018. That's not that long ago. It's like less than a decade ago, less than 5 years ago. Like we're acting like, you know, oh, I used to think choose joy back in 1985, but now I've been different. I've really learned. It's like you gotta keep people up to date on your changing opinions, or else we don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Process what you're feeling. If you don't allow yourself to feel scared, pissed, shamed, all of those things, if you don't allow them to go through you, you're gonna feel them forever, and it's gonna take a way harsher toll on your life, on your physical health, on your mental and emotional health, your relationships, all of it. So I've just learned to let myself feel all those things in the moment, and sometimes that moment could be weeks or months, but I come out the other side and I really have resolved the way that I feel. I really have gotten through those issues, as opposed to, oh, I'm gonna
Have you?
revisit this again and again for the rest of my life. So that's a big one for me, is like let yourself feel that, but also to acknowledge that really, truly, no bullshit, every single person makes mistakes. Every single person. And we say that, but I feel like the society that we live in tries to make that untrue. Like, I feel like social media, I feel like our families, friends, in-laws, people want so badly to remind us again and again and again of who we used to be, of the things that we once did, of past mistakes, of mistakes that had nothing to do with us, but oh, remember your mom tried to do this when she was your age, and look what happened to her. Like, there's so much that goes into it that it makes us believe that we're supposed to be perfect and we're supposed to get it right every single time. And I refuse to buy into that.
No one's saying that.
It's really painful.
No one has ever said, Rachel, you must be perfect every single time, or we are not participating in your, theatrics anymore. No one's ever said that. All we're asking for is accountability. Is if you're gonna pretend and say that you're authentic and you're an amazing person, like just live up to that. That's it. And there's certain things that I would think in my mind are required to have that title of like, you're such an amazing person. Okay, how about you apologize like correctly, or stop lying. It's like the lying and the misrepresenting things is what bothers me, and she hasn't stopped doing that. And so I'm like, I'm still off board. I'm sinking. I'm not being rescued by, the lifeboat of a good Rachel Hollis comeback story. Like I'm trying. I'm like trying to tread water as long as I can, but like it ain't happening.
When something goes wrong, or when you have a mistake, or when you fall down, obviously that it hurts so much. But I have said since my first podcast.
And the same thing, I'll just say this for the record, and I'm going to like skip around soon to the other parts where she talks about like her panic attack and whatever, that we're going full circle back to Heidi's panic attack. I want to play the gluten part, which I think is next, and then the panic attack, and then that's basically it. They, similar to Heidi, does not go into many details at all. It's very high level. Like, when you're going through trauma, you need to think of things that are like very important to you, and like there's no examples like, hey, this is what happened, or this is what I think, or here's a very tactical thing. It's very much like buzzword, 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 inside of buzzword community, buzzword resilience, buzzword hard things. Like, there's no depth in this interview at all. For 2 hours, I'm like, I learned like 2 things, tiny things that are really inconsequential.
podcast episodes, since the very first time I wrote a book, for as long as I've been doing this work, I have said, like, I'm going to get this wrong because I'm a human and I'm trying my best. And when I get it wrong, you're going to see me acknowledge it. You're going to see me stand back up. You're going to see me learn and grow and do better. And that's what, for the rest of my life, that's what's going to happen. But that only happens.
Again, she hasn't taken, to me, has not taken full accountability for Toiletgate still to this day. And I say that, and I could be corrected, but you know, when she did the Skinny Confidential podcast, that was like my time to go, okay, this is her coming out and making a statement about it, you know, with time passing. And she didn't basically change the entire narrative of what had happened to make it untrue. She railed against cancel culture, and she basically said like, oh no, I didn't even say anything bad. It's like, okay, then there's nothing that can be done further at this point. If you're not even willing to go, I was so up my own ass that I couldn't even see that I was like, you know, privileged in so many ways that I lost myself. Like, that's what I want to hear. And maybe that's just not true for her, but like, that's what I would need to like go, okay, you know, I think she's like seeing what I see.
Happens if we really believe that all human beings should have the chance to mess up and go again. Because if we believe that for everybody, we'll give that to ourselves.
Oh, God, yes, that is so true. And there's that moment of giving yourself the grace that I don't think many of us do. And I'm really leaning into that phrase so much.
Yeah.
Because every time I go to beat myself up, I'm like, oh, well, Lisa, you're human. Give yourself the grace.
Right.
And just by saying that phrase, literally give.
Okay, not to be mean, but I just had a thought. Lisa looks like she's about to go to the Jersey Shore, like go work at the boardwalk. That's the vibe. I'm kidding.
Give yourself the grace.
Right.
Work at the t-shirt
you're
shop.
Human. Cool. The one thing I'd love to ask is that process that you said, right? Acknowledge it, own it, you're human, get back up. It's that falling and getting back up. Do you do that for yourself? So I know you said like showing other people, right?
And like, what does like
hey,
getting back up mean? Like you keep making podcasts, like you keep hosting events, like is that what you mean, or is there something else? Like it's all vague again.
Like if I'm doing it, you can too. But how much of that is like, that's the recipe you need to make sure that you keep showing up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the circumstance, the season, what's going on, what has happened. Certainly as a mom of 4, and I work and I support my family, like I don't have the option of just not working anymore. I don't have the option of just being like, all right, I'm good. I'm going to go live on an island and process this pain for the next 2 years. I think like most.
Again, like this part kind of surprised me. This was like one crumb of tea, crumb of something. It's like, she's like, I don't have the luxury of not working for 2 years. It's like, didn't you tell your staff that you could just like fuck off to an island? Like you could go to Hawaii anytime you wanted. Didn't you make $20 million in like 2018? Like, am I just like crazy? Or did you blow through all that money in 2 years? Like, I know she's got to pay Dave off or whatever, but like he's buying like Teslas and mansions for Heidi, like allegedly. I mean, I don't really know what their stuff is, but like she has to work. I'm surprised by that. She doesn't have the luxury like other women do.
Parents, most people, even if you don't have kids, I think every single person has someone in their life who's counting on them. And so oftentimes those other people will become a catalyst for me to rise again. And I'll rise again before I have the wherewithal, before I have the emotion, because it's like, okay, we have to, at least in some capacity, we have to, whether it's like literally like physically standing back up and going again, you know, coming up the other side of the divorce of work.
Tactically, going again, what? Like just living every day or like something else? I struggle. Maybe I'm like dumb, but I struggle when there's not concrete. Like, for example, like when I blah, 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 like I need that extra and I feel like I'm just not getting it. And I didn't get it at all at this interview.
For kids was so difficult because you're not just holding space for your own pain, you're also helping them through something. And in those instances, when the kids were with me, I didn't have the option of going and crawling in bed and pulling the covers over my head because I have 4 little kids who are counting on me to be strong. And I feel really adamant about that because I know everybody has their own story and their own way of dealing with things, but I had memories from my childhood that were very painful of feeling like my parents didn't try and be strong for the kids. And so for me, it was very important, like, damn, even if I don't feel like I have all the answers, I haven't done enough therapy at that point, I hadn't, processed all these things yet, I could at least physically go through the motions, literally get out of bed, take a shower, make their breakfast, make their lunch, get them to school. They're gonna go to school. Okay, I'm gonna go have a good cry for a long time and then get myself back together before I pick them up because that's what I needed as a little kid, and so that's what I wanted to give them. So I think oftentimes the other people in our lives can be a really powerful catalyst. And there's a study that says that women are terrible.
What study? I need the citations, please. I don't believe a study research shows. No, it doesn't, probably. Or the research is done by like one person who just like wrote it on Reddit. I need more. A study? No.
Negotiating for themselves and like salaries or jobs or whatever. But when they negotiate for others, they're actually better than men. So women are stronger negotiators when they are fighting for someone else.
Yeah.
So I actually think it's a really powerful tool for women to, if you can't find it in yourself to stand up and go again,
Here you go.
who needs you to be strong right now?
That's very powerful. And I kind of think, though, that there's like that almost like anything, if you do it too much, now you're not doing it for yourself, right? Now you keep getting up for everybody else.
Right.
And when do you start breaking that cycle, especially if it's a relationship?
Right.
Because I've heard you talk about codependency, and we've spoken many times about just independency and codependency. But where do you then break that cycle? Where you
All women, this is a study, guys. It's a study. Researchers have said this for years. All women love Gucci.
now being dependent on your kids to get you out, emotionally get you out of bed, or work to emotionally get you out of bed versus I'm healing, so I'm getting out of bed.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me at least, that has been a really powerful component of just getting back up. Not the whole process, because I think you can get up for other people, but ultimately any healing work is always and only ever going to be for yourself. Because we all know there are plenty of parents in the world right now who got up again because the kids needed them to, but never actually did the work that needed to be done for them. And I hope that as we get older, we start to not want to live anymore with the pain, with the result of the trauma that we experienced when we were earlier, that we want to heal from those things. And I think the most difficult part about healing, and I've learned this a lot over the last 2 years, is that solo work. Nobody, it doesn't matter. You could have the most supportive partner in the entire world.
Like I do.
The greatest family, all the resources, all the money, you could have all of it. But that is solo work. That is you by yourself, and it's fucking hard. It is so hard to go to therapy every single week. It is so hard to think that
I will agree with her, what she's saying here. I don't know if she, if it's relevant to her or whatever work she's doing. I don't know. She's doing like energy healing with someone who is also her friend. So red flag. But, what the premise of what she's saying is true. I agree. Like going to therapy every week is hard. Opening up yourself to a stranger to talk about these things that you don't like about yourself, that you are falling short on, that like are triggering, that bring up other memories. And it sucks. It's hard. It shouldn't be sold as like 10 tips to fix your anxiety today. Like I hate those clickbait videos because, it's bullshit. It's like, if it was that easy, everyone would do it. And, a lot of people are suffering and not going to therapy that need it because it is such hard work. So I will agree. I'll give her, 1% more, 3% chance of some positive vibes her way. Okay, bye. Hello? Okay. Katie's done with this. She's over it.
you've gotten past something and then it pops up again. It is so hard to feel like you're repeating past mistakes, or that you're, continuing generational trauma, or any of it. It's solo work. And ultimately, everybody in your life benefits from it, but that is like you by yourself in a desert facing you. And it's freaking brutal.
So what is it that makes you keep going? Because to your point, most people don't do the work because it's that hard.
Yeah.
Because facing yourself, facing maybe the mistakes you've made, maybe, facing certain emotions
Yeah, you tell her, Lisa, the mistakes you made, Rachel.
that you've had. I've heard you talk about in looking back, you kind of like were ignoring certain signs that a lot of us, we ignore them out of protection, out of emotional protection. And we don't even give ourselves the space to ask the question about what that sign may mean.
Right.
So how do you start to assess that and self-soothe all at the same time so you can get through the work? Because I think that that's the hard part, is that you start to emotionally feel disrupted as you're starting to do the work. It feels very uncomfortable. You maybe start to look inwards, oh my God, maybe this is my fault, blame, I do that myself. So I'm speaking for myself. But you have to get past it to then do the work, to then see the results and be able to move on.
Even the chapter titles are like vague. I'm like, I watched this already in its entirety, and then like the chapter titles aren't helping me understand which part is which. It's like overcome fear, failure, mistakes, embracing your cycle and hormones. Like, okay, I know she talked about hormones like for like a whole thing. Thank you, Kimberly. Kimberly says, I feel like this tour is hitting her hard, and after it's over, we are going to see her try to shift into another audience. It'll be interesting. Yeah, I agree. I think, I'm surprised she gave the interview with the Skinny Confidential when she did, because she did it, and I think maybe she thought she would be accepted back, because she was like, very much, I don't want to do women's advice anymore. I just want to do cool shit with cool people. And maybe she thought that her new boyfriend was going to become a husband or something, and that she could just kind of like chill and do creative projects. And maybe he's not that into it right now. This is just me guessing. I don't know. And, so now she does have to work, and she does have to keep doing like the income source that she has, because something changed between the Skinny Confidential, where she was like, I don't want to give women advice anymore, to now doing this tour all of a sudden. It doesn't make sense necessarily why she would publicly say all those things and then immediately retract it and then go back to motivation, unless there was a money element involved, I think. But who knows?
But that moment
Thank you, Kimberly.
of disruption where people are like, yeah, this is too difficult.
Yeah.
What on earth makes you, going back to Miss Freaking Resilient, what makes you keep going? What is that thing? Even when you don't feel it, because I don't think you're abnormal. I think that you're very human, and that you just think in a way that allows you to keep going, even when you're in pain, even when you're hurt, even when you're feeling all the feels, you keep going. And so if we can bottle that up and give it to everyone like that, this is magic right there.
Yeah, my greatest core value is evolution. It's my guiding light. It's my guiding principle. It is everything to me. Is I want to become a better person. I think that's why we're all here. And I think that a better person to you looks very different than it does to me, than it does to him, than it does to anybody who's listening or watching this. And that's what I think is so beautiful about life, is that we're all on this individual journey, and we can all coexist in this desire to become a better version of ourselves, even though that looks like a million different things. So for me, if I'm calling that shot and I'm saying that what I want most is to evolve, what I want is to get to the end of my life and be like, fuck yeah, man, I didn't leave anything unturned. I didn't leave anything behind. I didn't keep stuff with me that wasn't serving me anymore. I became the very best version of myself. If that's what I want, then that's going to be painful, because change is always painful. Everything that we want to grow or make different, if you look at nature, if you look at our own body, when we break a muscle down to make it stronger, all of it is going to come at some cost. And sometimes it's deeply painful, but what I found is that the results that you get, the rewards that you get, it's exponential growth. It's not.
Yeah, again, like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm going to get back up and it's growth. Like, none of these words mean anything to me. They're just words, word salad emoji. Like, there's nothing, I'm getting nothing. It's giving nothing, as they say. Like, it's so vague.
Not slowly, going
Get to the
little
gluten
bit
part.
up in the graph. It's like a hockey stick. You guys have experienced this too. It's like you're willing to push yourself into deeply uncomfortable situations.
Let me tell you, Lindsay, if you watch Selling Sunset season 1, this is the house that was $40 million or $20 million that was being built in the Hollywood Hills. And they're like, we're going to find a person to buy this house. And guess who bought it? Tom Bilyeu, Lisa's husband. So yes, they probably write off the whole house as like, oh, this is where our headquarters is. It costs us $40 million to have this YouTube channel, the most expensive YouTube studio in the world. We don't pay taxes. I don't know if that's true, but it's in their house, I believe.
And that looks like different things at different times, where I probably am making an excuse because that's what I've got.
Oh, okay.
If you look at our own body, when we break a muscle down to,
I want to just find the key parts, but I don't know this enough to like go through it. So I'm sorry.
Exponential growth. It's not slowly, going a little bit up in the graph. It's like a hockey stick. You guys have experienced this too. It's like you're willing to push yourself into deeply uncomfortable situations.
They were not on the show, unfortunately. They sold it in season 2 or 3, but they never covered it. But you know who also works on Selling Sunset, apparently, like behind the scenes, is Graham Stephan. And Graham Stephan's like a YouTuber, so I'm sure that's how maybe like he knew Tom Bilyeu, perhaps. But yeah, it wasn't it was just, that was the house.
And that looks like different things at different times. But because you've put yourself into such a big discomfort, you also are experiencing such greater results, such a greater, in business terms, such a greater return on what you've just done. So it's not for everybody. And I can't tell you how many times I've been like crying and like, this is hard and why is this so difficult?
But what's difficult?
Like,
what?
Right. Because you said that this is your greatest value.
What do you do about excuses? Because as you were saying that, I was like, I totally hear you. Like, it's if you've experienced it once, if you've gone through real hardship and you see the hockey stick improvement in yourself, you then can use that as an example for future moments that you're going through. But what if you don't have that moment as proof of concept,
right?
If you will, how would you start to orient? And then also the excuses part, because I think so many of us, part of excuses is they feel very real to you.
Yes. And there are times where they are real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in those moments, how do you not use an excuse to be like, well, that's why I'm not there, though. It's not because I'm not trying hard.
Okay, just a thought that I don't know what they're talking about, honestly. I'm sort of like zoning out because it's boring. But I re-listened to some old content, and the one thing that bothered me, Rachel, about a year ago, so around the time of like with the Kathy Heller interview, when she was with her boo thing and she was kissing him under the starlights and whatever, she did a podcast and she said, the reason why I didn't hit all my goals this year, all my financial goals and all of my life goals, is because I've been busy making out with somebody. And I literally like screamed. I was like, what are you talking about? That's not the reason. And I'm like, that's not the reason. And I just think like the more I'm thinking about this and the more sort of like stuff that gets uncovered and like the more I just listen and hear her, and I'm very familiar with her tone and like all the things that she says, I think she's got a lying problem. And maybe she lies to herself so much that you believe it over time, but she really does lie a lot. It's not just like, oh, she's, saying it this way and that. No, it's like full on lies. It's like because like the whole thing with the Skinny Confidential, she lied. Because the way that the live stream was, she said, oh, I was standing up for a woman with depression and I was telling her not to, like telling people like stop bullying her. Like that didn't happen. I went back and watched it. That wasn't what happened. It was like, 10 minutes apart. Like it was completely lied. It's just a lie. At a certain point, it's a lie. Telling people on a podcast, oh, thousands of you have bought tickets and it's not true. That's a lie. Like, I try to give her credit, like, well, maybe she doesn't know, but I think she knows. And the thing about, like, back then, like, oh, the reason why I'm not, you know, succeeding at my business is because of my boyfriend and my boo and I'm just so in love. It's like, that's a lie. I'm sorry. That's why I don't like her, because she lies so much. It's not like, oh, I kind of think like, okay, we can debate, like, you know, what's right and what's wrong, but no, lying is wrong. That's it.
It's funny because there are times in my life where I was making an excuse. I'm sure there's certainly something in my life right at this moment I'm making an excuse about. But it is necessary for the other parts to work in this moment. I really believe, I'm sure Tom Bilyeu would disagree, but I really do believe that every single one of us is doing the best that we can with the tools, the resources, the access we have in this moment. A year from now or 5 years from now, hopefully those tools, resources, access, hopefully it'll be different. But right now, even people in your life who are awful, right? Maybe have some family members, or maybe people watching, you got a terrible parent and they did these crappy things to you. Even in that instance, they still are just doing the best that they can in that moment. Their best.
I mean, also, here's another example. And I think, like, okay, we're at 4 hours. We might have to do a part 2. Maybe I can do it tomorrow. Is everyone free tomorrow? Meet here, same time, same place, to finish this, and I can kind of pull some more stuff together. Because I'm getting pee syndrome. I need to pee my pants, and I haven't laughed enough at Rachel's content. But do you, like, okay, think of the way that she tells the story about not only the tampon story, which I highly believe, I highly doubt it's a real story. Like, oh, you really had sex with Dave. Okay, this is what Rachel claims. I'm going to go to my full screen. You claim, Rachel, that you had sex with your husband while you had a tampon lodged inside of you for multiple weeks and didn't feel it. It had no complications or any sort of medical problems. And then eventually you just took it out and were fine. Okay, that seems highly unlikely. And then the second part of that story, talking about like lying, the second part of that story is that she told that on Oprah's stage and claims that, you know, oh, the experience was so amazing. But I also told, like, Oprah said that there was a weird story to tell, but like, that's why people like me, because I tell true stories about myself. It's like, I don't think Oprah was, and then she sort of told it like, oh, so Oprah and I laughed in the sunset. Like, it was all good after that, you know. But she never posted anything of, like, there was like screen grabs of Oprah and Rach talking, but they only posted the photos. So I'm like, maybe Oprah said something like, girl, you're never coming back to this. Like, that was horrible. That was disgusting. Like, I don't want to hear about your tampons. You know, that's the thing. It's like, you know, I don't really believe that whole narrative about Oprah and all that. Then, you know, she's talking about Dave, like, oh, Dave has a double life and he did this and that and this and that, but never goes into detail. But then honestly, as much as I don't like Dave, Dave has not once that I remember talked shit about Rachel, ever. He's like stood up for her and said, like, defended her multiple times and said the only thing that he was truthful about was that, you know, she dumped me. And like, cause she was trying to make it seem like, oh, it's a mutual decision. And he was like, oh, I got dumped and I feel stupid about it. And that's why people took his side in the beginning. Now he's had his own issues and I'm not going to defend him on those. But like, I was going back through his old stuff and he even like defended her after the divorce, after it was like, you know, later in time, he was like, you know, she's still the mother of my children, which I think is a great thing to say and stand up for your ex-wife. Like, you know, and she has done the opposite. Now, I don't know what's gone on between them and maybe something is egregious, but like she's made it seem like, oh, it happened during the marriage, that all these issues were going on and that, you know, she couldn't say anything or didn't know and realized later. I don't buy it either. I think it's just trying to fix her image in some way, like that she just didn't get sick of him. Like, oh, she's not the type that just got sick of a guy and wanted to move on and have fun with her life. No, she's the type that got hurt in some way and had no choice but to leave. I just don't buy it. I'm sorry. Like, because especially in the old stuff, the way she used to talk about, you know, before the last year, really, she talked about the divorce like it was a million little things. It just wasn't working. I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. And that seems more real. And then all of a sudden it changed because people didn't accept that as like a great answer. It's like, well, why would you break up your family? Just like, why didn't you go to therapy? Why didn't you try? Because they said they didn't go to anything. They never, like, you know, Heidi and Chris apparently went to 7 therapists and it couldn't fix it. They went to 0 and never fought, allegedly, and never talked about what was wrong. And then just got divorced. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but she doesn't want to be judged. She's so afraid to be judged negatively that she'll change the story. And I don't know if she's aware, because maybe it's like, what do they call it when it's like not it's like pathological, or it's like compulsory. Like you can't, it's not like you're trying to lie. It's just like you can't stop. Maybe that's what it is. It's just on a lower level, and she's got the whole world watching. The whole world, like, you know, a small, in this large scope of the world, it's a small group, but we're watching, and, you know, I think there's a lot left unsaid or changed to make her look better.